What's up, everybody? Matt here again from East Coast Sabers, and today I'm bringing you a review of the recently released Parks / Korbanth Graflex 2.5. So we'll just jump right into it. I don't really want to waste a lot of time on this one. It's very straightforward, so let's just get right into it. So, first thing we have is you have your box that it comes in, just your brown shipper box. It will come in a, I believe it should come in a USPS box, but we have our typical assortment of accessories, just being the Empire Strikes Back / The Force Awakens bag. You have your clamp card, your bubble strip, and your two momentary switches that are attached to the bubble to the clamp card. You just break those off, and you have your A New Hope package with the 7 non-notched grips and your glass eye, which is still steel. And we'll get right into the hilt itself. Now, the Graflex 2.5 is being called the 2.5 because it has seen some changes in its design from previous iterations. We had the 2.0, and then we had the what we call the 2.1, which saw some minor modifications, and this is the latest iteration, which has seen even more changes. So, at first glance, the 2.5 is supposed to boast a better finish, new internal core design, so far I don't see anything that really stands out as being a problem. The internals, which we'll go over in a moment, have been simplified in a way, which makes more sense, and we'll go over that in a little bit. But for now, we'll just start at the top, right at the emitter, and as usual, I'll just work my way down, going over all of the differences, going over what I like about it, what I don't like about it. This is going to be a very impartial review, as all of mine are. I'm not paid to do reviews. I'm not, this was not given to me to do a review on. I'm going to be sending this back to Korbanth, so this is strictly for review purposes, and it's my honest opinion of it. So we'll just get right into that. So if we start at the emitter and work our way down, the S-curve is the same as we see on the old 2.0s and 2.1s. I actually have one here. This is a 2.1. I've robbed some parts off of it, so the inner core just kind of moves around, but as you can see, the emitter shape is still the same, which is still off from a vintage. It's kind of shallow. On a vintage, the emitter comes down in this first curve a little more. Not really a big deal. The bunny ears on this new 2.5 are shorter. If you look at the old 2.1, line them up, the bunny ears on the 2.1 are significantly taller, which is inaccurate to a vintage. So the fact that the bunny ears are now shorter is a big plus. I know a lot of people didn't care for the longer ears. Some people do. It's a matter of preference. I personally like the shorter ears. I think they look better. They are still held in place. If I can get the camera to focus. There we go. They are still held in place with a Allen screw. The screw does seem to be of better quality than previous releases. I have an Allen wrench around here somewhere, and I believe it is a, it's a 1/16 Allen, and on previous iterations, the screw would strip out constantly. Sometimes you couldn't even get the Allen key to go in without it stripping out the hex of the screw. But this one seems to be pretty decent. all the screws do. They're all the same size, and they all seem to be very snug. The Allen key, if I can zoom in, or get in close I should say, to here. There we go. See, the Allen key does have a little bit of movement inside the head of the screw. That could just be, I'm just using a cheap Allen key, and they're not always made to the best qualifications, or specifications I should say, but they do feel better than previous versions. So hopefully we don't have the problems of these screws stripping out like we've seen on previous ones, but that will be determined at a later date. The more people that get these, we'll start seeing if issues with that pop up, but for right now I like the feel of it and I'm pretty happy with that. Moving down, we still have the same style red button housing, I should say, the same style red button housing. Now I did run into an issue when I first got this. The red button was incredibly tight. I actually had to use a pair of pliers to get it off, which is common. Most 2.5s, they come very tight. I really wish they'd grease those threads and clean them up a little better at the factory, but it is what it is. Just kind of wrap a rag around it. If it's tight, use a pair of pliers. I don't have the ones that I use available. Oh, yes I do. I just use something like this, and I open it with adjustable jaw, and I just open the jaws up and wrap a rag around the housing to protect them, and just get a subtle bite and just very slowly loosen it. And then when you put it back on, make sure that you grease those threads with some white lithium grease. That will make it go together and come apart in the future so much easier. The beer tab is still the angled beer tab with the tall spacer. Still not sure why they did that. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's still common. That's what the 2.0s and the 2.1s came with, and this one is no different. So take that for what it is. It's not a worse design than what we've seen. It's just, it's not also not an improvement. The slide switch is still just the shiny plate with the screw. Also not an improvement. The pins are still the stepped later style pins with no sync tabs or anything like that. The emitter screw is still the same type of screw. So overall, like I said, not a lot of improvements or changes at all on the outside. Nothing has been made worse, but nothing at the same time is made better, so status quo has not changed there. The screw for the clamp also has not changed. The quality of the clamp does seem greatly improved. This one at least does not have the blotches and the stains all over it like we've seen previously. You can tell that they are chromed and then they are brushed, so the tight spaces near the clamp braces are still fairly chrome, but just a little bit of light brushing with a Scotch-Brite pad will take care of that if you have an issue with it. But the main thing is that they are not stained. This one is it looks very nice. The etched lines are very well pronounced. We've seen problems in the past with shallow lines. As they go around, they get really thin until they're pretty much non-existent on some of them. And I don't have that with this one, which is very, very nice to see. So overall, the clamp has been, the finish on the clamp has been greatly improved. The design of the clamp is still just the typical Graflex clamp. Nothing to change there. The lower half, I don't see any problems with. The pommel comes right off. Of course, you may have to screw in your D-ring to get it off. I can use my palm of my hand and some pressure on this one. If you open the clamp up, it comes right off. You have your different style holes for whichever side you're using. Simply 6 holes for Empire Strikes Back or The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. 7 holes on this side for A New Hope. Simply unscrew the pommel and swap it around for whichever side you want to use. So now we'll get into the internals, and I will go over the changes made to the inner core. So I will put that off to the side. And able to take the screw out. I'm trying to look through the camera here, not a good idea. Okay, I did run into a small problem taking off the clamp screw, where the screw itself, the hex head was actually pretty stripped out, and it was just a poorly machined screw. If it will focus on that, there we go. Yeah, the hex head just was not properly machined, and my Allen key was just spinning and spinning and spinning in it. So evidently we do still have some minor issues with screws. Hopefully not too many. Like I said, all of the other ones so far seem to be really good. The 3 up here are fine. It was only the clamp one, so I just used a pair of pliers very carefully off camera to remove it. You can also use a small Torx bit. I don't remember the exact size, but if we remove the clamp, you can now see the new silver inner core lower. And then, as always, to remove the inner core, you just remove the emitter screw, which, as I said, that one does come right out. You remove the slide switch screw, which also does come right out, and the slide plate itself. As you can see, now our inner core moves a little bit more freely, but not free enough yet. You need to remove your top red button. You can probably go ahead and pull the button right off the beer tab, and then simply unscrew the beer tab screw at the top. Make sure you don't lose the washer underneath the beer tab, but it still doesn't come out, so we need to remove those pins. And I have the tool from the Graflex shop that I use for all of my pin removal. There we go. And with the 2.5, since there's no lip on the front, we don't need to remove the bunny ears and slide it out the front as we do others. We can just slide the whole thing right out the back. Put the shroud off to the side. And here we have our new style inner core, which is a 2-piece design, which is interesting. Obviously that was to save on material, save on cost. If we look at the 2.1 and open this up, and pull out this inner core, as you can see, this is the original style, which was the grenade section, which for whatever reason they made it a grenade section. I still don't understand. It doesn't make any sense, except for maybe rigidity, for strength, I suppose. Extra material without being too much material. In my mind, this new design makes a lot more sense, and it has been confirmed that the current chassis options for the 2.0s will fit without a problem. The internal sizing is the same, so that is a very good thing. What I'm not sure about, and also I don't believe, oh no, this one does have a screw hole. Okay, yeah, they still have the same holes. They're missing the hole, I think. Yep, this one does not have the hole halfway up, which was really only used for, I think, Parks's own internal design for his chassis and his electronics and things like that. But the blade holder section is the same. The lower half is the same. Same diameter, same dimensions. So all existing 2.0 and 2.1 3D printed chassis will still bolt right into this new design. The only thing I'm not sure about is why this notch here is not all the way through, and that kind of has me concerned for those wanting to do clamp switches, because as you can see, this one is cut all the way through, and it's great because that's where the clamp goes. And if you're running switches in your clamp, you can run it right through here, and there will be either room in the chassis to run the wires through, or it will just be open and you just run the wires back to the soundboard. This one, however, is not. There's a notch there, but there's no hole. So at the most, you would have to either file, or you can just drill a hole for the wires to go through. Not a big deal, but it is confusing why they would take a step backwards. I'm not really sure about that, but it is what it is, and it's not a big deal. The other thing that has me a little worried looking at this is the fact that since it is thread together two-piece design, that when you install it in your upper half, you line everything up, and you line up the sync pin holes, line up the lower. This notch does not meet up with where it's supposed to in the upper half. It should line up something. Well, I can't even get it to turn that way, but if we loosen it from the upper half, line everything up again, it should line up something like that. So the fact that you have to tighten when it's tight, it has to be, it's not properly aligned. That also has me concerned, but from the looks of it, all you'd have to do is like we do on the pommels, and you could probably just wrap some Teflon tape around these threads to bulk them up a little bit, so that when you thread this on, it's going to make this piece stop at a different location. It's not going to thread all the way on. It will stop, clocked back a little bit. You could also maybe try using some clocking washers. I know Custom Saber Shop sells clocking washers. You could try something like that. I'm not sure why it would be like that. The two-piece design is still kind of confusing. I don't understand why they couldn't just make it thinner and have it be one piece. Maybe to save on the anodizing it takes to do the top piece. Maybe they didn't want to anodize the whole thing anymore. I'm not exactly sure. But the fix for that, excuse me, for that again is fairly simple. Either a clocking washer or some Teflon tape. And you may just have to do it a couple times to get it to stop right where you want to, so that the notch sits right about there. And like I said, if you want to drill a hole or take a file and completely or a Dremel and completely open this space up, you can also do that, because that's how the older ones were, and it makes wire passages a lot easier. If we take the old inner core and slide it into the new shroud, which is basically the same shroud, and line everything up, you can see that the slot does actually perfectly line up because it's all one piece. So it is what it is. It's a simple fix to get it to work, and there's really no problems I see with that. As I said, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's a simple fix, and it's certainly not a game breaker. It's not going to stop you from being able to use it. It's really not a big deal at all, but I have to mention it for the sake of the review. But I do like the fact that it is lighter, and it's just kind of, it feels much nicer all the way around. It's still kind of confusing as to why they chose this design. There's a lot of things that personally I would change about the internal design of the 2.0, but I know that Parks does design these for his own electronics, and we simply modify them to work with the electronics that we prefer to use. So we have to take that for what it's worth. Overall, though, the changes made are minor. They're not, they're not huge changes. The inner core being the big one. The finish on the clamp, I think, is the big game changer here. The finish on is just much nicer, and I do have a clamp from the old 2.1s. As you can see, the lines themselves haven't really changed. The 2.5 is deeper on the bottom lines, which is nice, or I should say the top lines, I guess. Let's get that proper orientation. Yes, the top lines on the 2.5 are much nicer, but they're nice and even all the way around. But the big thing being the finish of the clamp itself, because as you can see, like this one has stains all over the upper side of it where the clamp braces are, and you can try polishing them, you can try sanding them, you can try all kinds of things, and there's no guarantee that they're going to come out, and it's difficult with the lighting that I have here to see them properly, but it's just not ideal. Whereas this one is completely stain free. Like I said, it may be a little more chrome up in these areas where you'd like it to be, but just a couple seconds with a red Scotch-Brite pad and it will dull it right up, make everything match. The clamp braces themselves are a good quality. The finish on them is nice, a nice brush finish. Yeah, the clamp, definitely an improvement. The inner core, an improvement. Still nothing, no huge changes. All your chassis will fit. The electronic installation will be exactly the same as it was previously, so nothing to worry about there. You may just have to still make a modification if you only want to run clamp switches. If you are still using your red button for an activation switch or a switch of any kind and you don't want to put anything in the clamp, then you have nothing to worry about. The lower half modification here is only necessary if you want to run clamp switches, which not a lot of people do, I found. It's my preferred method, but most people prefer the red button, so as far as that goes, there will be no modification needed. You will still have to drill your LED module retention screw hole as described in my Let's Build a Graflex series. The chassis retention seems to be is still included, which is good. We can use that to retain the chassis. And the wire passage hole from the red button will have to be still drilled or carved out, depending on how large you go with it, for your red button wires to come down and into the chassis, all of which is described and demonstrated in my Let's Build a Graflex series, which I will leave a link to in the description below. But overall, I'm happy with the changes that have been made to this. The clamp being the biggest one, and the inner core definitely an improvement there as well. Although I still don't understand the point of not machining that out. But like I said, not a big problem. And if you can't get, if yours does not line up properly with the shroud, just put some Teflon tape around the threads, or get some clocking washers from Custom Saber Shop if they fit, and that should take care of that. But overall, not a lot of changes. No, certainly nothing's been made worse. The bunny ears are definitely better. The screws, for the most part, are a better quality. I did only have one issue with the clamp screw, so be careful with that. But it came right out with a pair of pliers, and I would definitely prefer to use a Torx bit I think it's like a T7 or a T8 Torx, something really small. But those do work really, really well for getting stripped Allen screws out. So again, easy fix. So that's the hilt itself. So now we'll just move into the very, very small overview of what you get in the accessories kits. So we'll start with you have the bubble strip, which hasn't changed. This one does not have any bubbles in the bubbles. Sometimes you get little air pockets in the magnifying bubbles. I don't see those in this one, so some do, some don't. You have your clamp card for Empire Strikes Back, The Force Awakens, and The Last Jedi. That hasn't changed since previous incarnations. Still not overly accurate for what's in the films, but it's not bad. And you have your two momentary switches that do just break right off. You just snap them off the card. You have your Empire Strikes Back, Force Awakens, The Last Jedi bag of stuff. And of course you have your 6 notched grips. You have your Kobold style D-ring. It is still chrome, which I'm not a big fan of the chrome. I wish it was more of a satin finish, but it's not bad. The D-ring is nice quality. You have your screws for holding on the D-ring. You have your 6 screws for going in the grips. Again, they are still the Allen head screws, which I believe are inaccurate for The Force Awakens. They should be a 3/8 inch rivet, and Empire Strikes Back should be a small black Phillips head screw. You have your second, there's a couple more screws. You have your second red button that goes on the bottom. This one is for blade retention, but it does still have a hole in it in case you do want to run some wires through it. That does require modification of the inner core if you do wish to do that. Most people either put the second button in the clamp or somewhere else. Not many people do it in here because it does act as blade retention, so you will have to figure out how to make those two things work together. But the housing is the same, unchanged. The big improvements are the switch caps themselves. They are plastic instead of anodized red. So let's get a close-up of that. These are far more accurate to a vintage than the red anodized ones that used to come with the 2.0 kits. If we look at an actual vintage, you can see that the color is not identical. The ones that come with the 2.0, or I should say the 2.5, excuse me, are a more purplish than the red that comes with a vintage, but it's still far, far, far more accurate than the 2.0's red anodized. So that is a big improvement and will definitely change the look of the completed Saber. And then we just get right into the A New Hope bag, which again has not changed. You still have your second set of grips, the 7 straight grips, as you can see, no notches of any kind. You have your A New Hope style D-ring, which is just very basic, takes 1 screw, which is provided, of course. And you have your glass eye, which actually isn't glass, it is just pure chrome, which can be upgraded. Of course, most things can be upgraded from either the custom Saber shop or my preferred source for a lot of things, and they have been adding a lot more accessories and upgrades, is graflexshop.com. They have tons of stuff, and they have actual see-through glass eyes, both retention screw and actual see-through, like replica style. So that's easily upgraded. But overall, I really like this update. Of course, there's always room for improvement, and I hope to see some improvements made in the future, but for now, these are welcome changes, and I think they will make everybody's experience with this kit even better. So that's it. That's my entire overview and review, I guess, of the 2.5. Like I said, I was going to make this one quick. Not a lot to go over, but overall, I give it an 8 out of 10. The problems, some of the problems that it had are still there. They did make improvements. The finish is definitely better. The quality is definitely better. So that's a big step in the right direction. And many of these smaller grievances people have with it, they can be upgraded. The buttons can be upgraded. The clamp cards can be upgraded. The grips can be upgraded. Many things can be upgraded if you wish, but if you're on a budget and you just want a nice belt hanger and you're not overly obsessed with accuracy, the 2.5 kit is definitely a solid option, and it's still my preferred option for dueling. If you swap out the inner core with a 1-inch inner core, this thing is still fully capable of heavy hand-to-hand combat, or I should say saber-to-saber combat, but it is still my preferred version. Like even the TGS, the Romans, or a Vintage, due to the design of the hilt being the replica of a flash handle. Flash handles were never made for dueling. The 2.0 was made to be a saber that just looked like a Graflex, so it is still the preferred one for dueling. And if you want to pick one up, you can either, my preferred vendor is Randy Johnson, aka Korbanth. You can find him at sithplanet.com. You can find him on pretty much all of the lightsaber Facebook groups, including my own Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Graflex Addict Support Group. I will leave a link for that in the description below as well. Feel free to send him a message. I believe the kits are $195 plus shipping and handling. I believe shipping is $15 if you're in the US. I'm not sure about international. So if you're on the hunt and you want a either duelable Graflex, or just you're not too obsessed with screen accuracy like some people are, this is definitely a solid kit, and I definitely recommend it. And yeah, I give it an 8 to an 8.5. The improvements are definitely welcomed, and overall it's just still a very solid option. So thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for my other reviews. I do have a Romans Generation 2 in hand that I will be releasing a video for. I should be expecting an 89 Sabers Graflex as well as a stainless from JQ Sabers, or Matthew Sale, who actually produces the hilts for JQ Sabers. So keep an eye out for those, and as always, may the 4th be with you.